You might have heard the rumors by now, but word on the street is that a certain jolly green giant might be playing a huge role in the upcoming Spider Man film, Spider Man Brand New Day, possibly as one of Spider Man's main antagonists, which would be wild but super fun because Hulk is one of the most powerful beings in all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
But how exactly does that work? Like on a scientific, biological level? Like what happens inside of Bruce Banner that causes him to go from computer screen geek to mean green freak? Let's get into it, shall we?
But before we get into it, just want to remind you guys to head up to the Heavy Spoilers merch store to pick up a fancy new Heavy Spoilers shirt to wear on your body today. We've got some fantastic and fun shirts for the average Marvel fan and beyond. So if you guys like having cool things on your bodies, head on over to the Heavy Spoilers merch store today. Right now, even. Chop chop, time's a wasting.
Now, as most of you who have watched all of the MCU movies probably already know, the Incredible Hulk would not exist were it not for the innovative mind of one Dr. Abraham Erskine, the original creator of the super soldier serum that allowed a scrawny Steve Rogers to become a biologically enhanced weapon of war with sweet abs. But of course, as soon as that happened, Dr. Erskine would be tragically assassinated by a member of Hydra looking to steal a vial of his super soldier serum for the Red Skull. Ever since then, the American government has been absolutely obsessed with trying to recreate that very serum, as evidenced by the tragedy of Isaiah Bradley that we learned in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and was a major focal point in the recent Captain America Brave New World film. Then, over the next few decades, the government would then synthesize their own version of the serum that they used on Isaiah Bradley and a number of his war buddies. However, for some odd reason, Isaiah Bradley was the only one of their test subjects that survived those experiments, leading to the government imprisoning him for 30 years just to study his biology and blood. However, with the escape of Isaiah Bradley in the 80s, the government was forced to think of another way to make their own super soldiers so America would always end up on top when it came to warfare. But after several decades of little interest in making super soldiers, boom, here come that old dirty bitch Osama bin Laden doing a 9/11. This, of course, causes America to start freaking out about national security, which eventually leads the government to restart the old Project Rebirth super soldier project in their own way, resulting in the birth of Project Gamma Pulse, led by General Thaddeus Ross. And this is where Bruce Banner comes in. General Ross desperately needed to recruit a nerd who knew a whole lot about gamma radiation, nuclear physics, and biochemistry. So he decides to recruit Bruce Banner to Project Gamma Pulse to join his nerdy-ass daughter, Betty Ross, who was an expert in the fields of cellular biology herself. And that last part there is incredibly important because Betty Ross is literally the only reason Bruce Banner's brain and body did not get cooked when he doused himself in gamma radiation. But I will talk more about that in a bit. Because General Ross knew that Bruce and Betty were two peace-loving hippies who did not like the idea of using their science to help make super soldiers to kill other human beings in wars, that motherfreaker decided to lie right through his mustache, telling Bruce and Betty that the serum the government needed them to make was actually to help soldiers combat radiation poisoning. However, the two lovebirds were hoping that their work would be revolutionary to helping humanity heal from various diseases and ailments by strengthening the human body's ability to self-heal, boosting the human body's immune system as well as its ability to combat previously untreatable diseases and brain tumors and whatnot. Now, the main difference between Project Rebirth and General Ross's Project Gamma Pulse is the specific type of radiation applied to the body of someone who has taken some super soldier serum. Because back when Dr. Abraham Erskine was creating Captain America alongside Howard Stark, they decided to irradiate Steve Rogers' body with an orange yellowish type of energy that they called Vita radiation, with the presence of this radiation being what triggers the drastic evolution of Steve Rogers' previously scrawny muscles. Vita means life in Latin, so these Vita rays gave Steve Rogers a new life as a super soldier, hence why the project was named Project Rebirth specifically. However, this time around, instead of using Vita radiation, Project Gamma Pulse decided to use, you guessed it, gamma pulses. And this is where Bruce Banner's background in gamma radiation comes in, as the hope was that gamma could produce results equal to or better than Vita radiation. It's Vita radiation, I don't know. It's one of those two. Vita, Vita, doesn't matter. Vida la vida loca. But only after Bruce developed a new super soldier serum using his background in biochemistry and nuclear physics. While Betty Ross's proficiency in cellular biology was absolutely vital in aiding the subject's blood cells to be able to absorb deadly amounts of radiation. Not only this, but Betty Ross has deep familiarity with how radiation affects the brain specifically, even having a newspaper article printed of her groundbreaking discoveries. Using her big brain, Betty was able to develop a liquid called a myostatin primer meant to prepare the subject's cells to soak in excess amount of radiation. And with Bruce having remade the serum and Betty having made this special primer, Bruce was so damn confident that his serum was going to work that he decided to test it on his own damn self, injecting himself with both the serum and Betty's special primer for shooting a massive gamma radiation laser directly into his brain to see if his body could resist being poisoned to death. And to Bruce and Betty's credit, it worked. The serum technically did make Bruce physically stronger and healthier, while Betty's myostatin primer allowed Bruce's brain and blood cells to not only endure a boatload of deadly gamma radiation, but literally absorb it all into his brain and blood cells. However, because General Ross was not entirely truthful about the real purpose of the serum that they were developing, when the gamma radiation was applied to Bruce's body, all the muscles of his scrawny body began to grow dramatically larger than expected. Ross hoped that he'd have a transformation similar to Steve Rogers, but the use of gamma radiation specifically to activate the serum only served to amplify the serum's effect. So not only were Bruce's muscles excessively enlarged, but the amount of gamma coursing through his bloodstream also turned his skin green at the same time. But more importantly, on a neurological level, this radioactive manipulation of Bruce's brain caused two major things to happen to Bruce's brain. One, an astronomical amount of gamma radiation was absorbed into Bruce Banner's brain and stored into the brain's amygdala. And this is the part of the brain that is essentially in charge of one's emotional state. And two, the radiation mutated Bruce's brain just enough to cause a new and separate consciousness to be awakened, with that consciousness being given a voice only in the presence of enough gamma energy in the blood. And this is, of course, a side effect of Bruce Banner's dissociative identity disorder, which appeared to have been dormant until the trauma of his radical transformation. So essentially, as I understand it, because Bruce had a ton of gamma directly aimed at his noggin, his brain became a storehouse of crazy amounts of gamma radiation. And it's the amygdala itself that decides whether or not any of that gamma radiation is allowed to flow into the blood cells in Bruce's body. And since the amygdala is what regulates emotion, when Bruce Banner experiences intense fear or rage, that's when the amygdala allows the gamma floodwaters to open. Then Bruce's special blood cells, now primed with that combination of super soldier serum and Betty Ross's primer, then absorbs all the radiation, which triggers the rapid growth of Bruce's muscles. And no, I'm not pulling all this information out of my ass. This is exactly what Dr. Samuel Stern said to both Bruce and Betty following his first experiment on Bruce.
The gamma pulse came from the amygdala. I think Dr. Ross's primer lets the cells absorb the energy temporarily and then it abates. That's why you didn't die of radiation sickness years ago.
Now, this is of course extremely inconvenient for Bruce Banner specifically due to him having an extreme anger regulation problem on top of his newly discovered DID. This dude used to have an incredibly short temper until the introduction of the Hulk forced him to have to develop a crazy amount of techniques to control that anger over the course of the next 15 plus years. Not everyone has the same mental emotional struggles that Bruce Banner has. Most people don't actually, including Bruce Banner's cousin, Jennifer Walters, a woman who would have Bruce Banner's special gamma-irradiated super soldier Hulk blood introduced into her own bloodstream to become She-Hulk. Because Jennifer Walters did not have a debilitating anger issue, she was able to control her Hulk transformations with a lot more ease and quickness than her cousin Bruce. Her brain's amygdala was far more regulated, due in large parts to Jennifer's own challenging life experiences, which forced her to have to regulate her emotions on the regular in order to survive. You get far more training in daily anger management when you live in a patriarchal society that tends to make women feel undervalued and unsafe than as a man with anger management issues that has far less opportunities to control that anger. And like I said before, and this is very important here, Bruce did not start his anger management training until he was well into adulthood, and his Hulk accident forced him to have to start controlling himself, whereas Jen had been forced from birth to have to mindfully manage her anger in order for her to not provoke the anger of other men. Something that is especially difficult when you look as hot as Tatiana Maslany does. Let's be real. And to be absolutely clear, this is not to say that Bruce did not deal with his fair share of anger triggers growing up, especially with his douchebag of an abusive father in the comics. No one is discounting Bruce's past. I'm just saying that when it comes to the amount of daily anger triggers that society threw at both Bruce and Jen was forced to keep herself from blowing up more often, just because of the way society was built. So because Jen had all those years of practicing mindful control of her responses to all of these constant amygdala stimulating situations, she's worked out her amygdala to be able to mindfully activate and deactivate her Hulk powers. Like her amygdala wasn't releasing gamma radiation into her bloodstream in an unpredictable and chaotic manner. It's all very intentional for her. And of course, because Jen did not suffer from DID like Bruce did, she did not develop a completely separate alter during her Hulk transformation, able to stay completely lucid in both forms. But the question still remains, how come Jen Walters isn't as large as Bruce or the Abomination when she transforms? I mean, yeah, she does get a little bit bigger, but like, why doesn't she have super bulky muscles like the both of them do? Well, I believe the answer to this lies with Jennifer's specific levels of gamma exposure and how she was exposed to gamma in the first place. Like, Bruce literally got himself a gamma shotgun to the head, turning his brain into a massive storage house of gamma, whereas Jennifer only had Bruce's gamma irradiated blood mixed in with her own following a car accident. This means that when Jen gets angry or fearful, her amygdala has far less gamma radiation to deliver to her blood cells to trigger significant muscle growth. She's legit only working with the gamma that came packaged with Bruce's blood, rather than having this massive storehouse of gamma inside of her brain. And we see this sort of happen with Emil Blonsky as well in the 2008 Hulk movie. When Ross first recruited him, Blonsky was given an initial round of super soldier serum, getting injections in both his muscles and his bone marrow through the spine. But then Hulk kicked that motherfucker into a tree, leading to Blonsky getting a second helping of super soldier serum again, making him even stronger. However, because Blonsky specifically did not get a shotgun of gamma radiation to the brain or even take a bath in Vita radiation like Steve Rogers did, Blonsky's muscles did not get bigger despite his slight strength upgrade. Same goes with John Walker and the Flag Smashers in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. No radiation means no muscle growth. But since Blonsky became absolutely obsessed with them muscle gains, he would force Samuel Stearns to finally give him a blast of gamma right to the face, along with a little bit of Bruce Banner's blood, which again has Betty's primer and Bruce's gamma-irradiated super soldier serum inside of it. This gamma blast then triggers the serum in both Blonsky's muscles and bone marrow to grow like crazy, turning him into the Abomination. Bruce Banner did not inject the serum into his bones, which is why his bones don't protrude out of his body. So much like Bruce, Blonsky now has a massive storehouse of gamma inside of his brain that his amygdala can release into his bloodstream at any time to trigger growth. And over the years while being trapped in the raft, Blonsky has figured out ways to control his own anger so he can control his transformations at will. And it seems like Samuel Stearns replicated his Blonsky experiment with President Ross in Cap 4, likely injecting Ross with some of Bruce's blood from his massive collection of Bruce blood that we saw in Hulk 2008, before secretly feeding Ross gamma pills over time to slowly build up Ross's inner gamma storehouse until he finally exploded from all the political stress. But again, since both Blonsky and Ross did not have DID, another Hulk personality did not form as a result of these gamma transformations. But yeah, that's pretty much how the Hulk transformation works on a scientific level in the MCU in a nutshell. But before I go, I do want to talk about Samuel Stearns' own gamma mutation. One that didn't turn him into a Hulk, but into a big-brained lunatic, after a drop of Bruce's blood enters his bloodstream, much like it did for Jennifer Walters. However, because Bruce's blood was absorbed directly into Stearns' brain and was filled with serum, gamma radiation, and primer, this caused his brain muscle to start growing in a very limited way, much like She-Hulk's muscles grew in a very limited way. And also, right before his own transformation, Samuel Stearns also exposed his own self to some bits of the gamma radiation that he blasted inside of Blonsky, as Stearns was wearing absolutely no protection in that radioactive room. When Bruce blasted himself with radiation, he was the only one in the room, but Stearns was literally right next to Blonsky. So after Bruce's blood enters Stearns' brain, it seems like both the gamma in that blood and the gamma in the room began Stearns' cranial transformation. Then, after being arrested and jailed, General Ross would then expose Samuel Stearns' body to even more gamma radiation, causing his brain to mutate further, which is why the leader looks so damn deformed and gross in Brave New World. And while a lot of audience members did not exactly like the way that the leader looked in that movie, because it seems to me that the leader's brain is not fully done mutating in the MCU. I believe at some point between Cap 4 and the leader's next appearance, even more gamma radiation will be introduced inside of his brain, triggering even more growth and green skin, finally making the leader appear more like he does in the comics. But of course, that has yet to be seen. But anyways, that is it for this breakdown of the Hulk powers in the MCU. Let me know what you guys think of this video in the comment section down below, and if you guys want to see me break down how the Hulk powers work in the 2003 film, because that's a whole different kind of beast, no pun intended. You guys can follow me at MasterTainment on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, wherever I am on the internet, but most importantly, follow Heavy Spoilers here on YouTube by hitting that subscribe button, and maybe even hitting that like button if you guys enjoyed the video. But like always, I have been MT, you guys have been amazing, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.